What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of For the Fowlers. I'm Brandon. Got a good guest on here today. Got Colin Ozier. You guys probably remember him from our season check-in episode a few weeks ago. Colin is our For the Fowlers expert on Southern California duck hunting. But no, I wanted to bring Colin on here today to kind of get to know him a little better. And, I've always been curious about what it's like hunting down in Southern California. So we're going to hear about it from him and we'll go from there. So what's up, Colin? How you doing, man?
Good, man. Good to hear from you, dude.
Abs-
Appreciate you having me on.
yeah. First off, man, a few days removed from Christmas. Merry Christmas. Hope you and the family had a
Merry
good one.
Christmas.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How was the holiday for you?
it was pretty chill. We were talking before this, but I'm in the process of moving to Northern California, so we decided to keep it pretty low key and just kind of hung around here and ate enchiladas, and that was it.
Nice. Yeah. I do want to say, hey, thank you very much for the invite. As you know, I was down in Southern California for the holiday, spending some time with family down there. And Colin was nice enough to invite me down or invite me for a hunt. But unfortunately, just the timing of the day and whatnot and things going on, family obligations, it didn't work out. But I really appreciate the invite. And we'll
Oh, dude.
definitely, I know you got a lot going on with the move and everything, so I don't know if it's going to be in the cards for this waterfowl season, but I'll take you up
No, but
on.
we'll have to we'll take a trip down here, and it's just such a weird, unique ecosystem, I guess. I think it's worth checking out at least once.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we don't go as deep as Wister, San Jacinto, but once you move up here, maybe we make the trek down to Kern together, and you kind of
Yeah,
show me what
dude.
that's all about. Because I've always been curious about the Kern, and maybe we can dive into that a little bit today. But
It's a terrible refuge and nobody should ever hunt it.
absolutely, right? Yeah, that's how it is up here too, man.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Horrible spots, horrible spots. So I know we chatted a few weeks ago on that season check-in, but I've been following along on your Instagram. And for those of you guys that don't follow Colin, it's worth a follow. The sweat line, he's got some great pictures on there of some of the success he's having out in the field. But I've been following along, and looks like you're getting into him a little bit. How's the hunting been?
So honestly, this has been a slower season, and I don't think it has anything to do with like bird numbers. I think it's just like the weather was kind of weird, and we got that big gray dome, the south end of the Central Valley down here too, so that played a part in it. And the other thing is, like, I just haven't hunted as much this year, like with the move coming up, trying to work a little more and be responsible at home and all that. So it's been a weird year, but the nice thing is, like, having been here for a couple of seasons, I feel like I was finally able to figure some of these places out and like just tried to make the most of the trips I've been taking, and it's gone good. I've had a good time.
Yeah, so what's been kind of the key? Is weather changed a little bit? Is it just like the overall migration working north to south? Is it just kind of, making the most of your opportunities, getting out as much as you can? What's kind of been the key to success for you down there?
So I think the big thing is just like, especially early on, was just spending as much time as I could at the refuges. I think like a place like San Jacinto is so small. It's nice because it's close. It's only an hour from LA, but you're frequently going to see 300 plus people in the parking lot for 50 spots. They got, it's just small, and it's all assigned blinds, and you're just kind of packed in there. So it gets pretty discouraging, but just taking the time, like driving down to Wister, sitting in the sweat line, even if you have to refill or something and it's not that great, just like figuring out, uh, yeah, I mean, and people say that all the time, like putting your time in. And now, after a couple of seasons, I get to kind of skip that figuring out stage, and I kind of have a general idea of where to start.
Yeah.
Like these kind of main areas, and I don't know if it's the same there, but like I'm always gonna try and get to like the center of the refuge. Sometimes it might be by a closed zone, but sometimes it's being super backed up to a closed zone is a bad thing. You're just gonna sit and watch birds fly over you all
Yep.
day. And that's okay. And the other thing I've noticed too is, like, if there's a free roam area, just not being like married to the spot, like maybe only throwing out a half dozen decoys in the morning and like leaving my sled packed up. And when shoot time comes, I'm going to give it 30, 45 minutes and I'm going to say, like, this ain't working, but like that spot is, and I'm just going to go ahead and move.
Yeah, man, I couldn't agree with you more on that last point there. And that's one of the things I've really made an effort to do this season is be more mobile on the refuge.
Yeah.
Packing lighter, running less decoys, but even like the gear that I bring, like I just got like this, it's an AVNX gear stick that it basically it's super simple. Pop it in the sled. I got my backpack on. So, I mean, I'm mobile now. So even if I need to move, it doesn't matter if I'm moving 20 yards or I'm moving 200 yards.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the past, I've been like, it took me a half hour to set up. I'm gonna stick it out, right? But I'm just watching
Yeah.
birds dive into a hole. But I don't move because I brought out 3 dozen decoys
And
and
you're like, dude,
yeah,
it's a
yeah.
ton of work.
And I got
Yeah.
my marsh stand over here, and I got my stool. I got everything set up for the day of hunting, and I found to be more successful being light and being able to move.
Yeah.
So no, that's awesome. Well, right on. So we didn't really dive into this the last time you were on because it was kind of a quick conversation. But I'm curious. Let's rewind a little bit. How long have you been hunting? How did you get into it? Like, what's kind of
Yeah.
the background there?
So I grew up in Indianapolis, Indiana, and did not come from a hunting family. It's like my dad was a farm kid, and like all his side of the family's in like central, like rural parts of Illinois and Missouri. And uh, my mom was like an army brat, and they moved around a bunch. And so when they ended up in Indianapolis for some reason, and like we're just like, we're not going anywhere, we're staying here. And I actually wasn't a big fan of the Midwest, but I started doing like tree work when I was 20, and I worked with a bunch of rednecks, and one of them was from Meridian, Mississippi, and was into duck hunting. Because believe it or not, duck hunting is not a big thing in Indiana. You're kind of out of any flyway. But because of that, it was always fairly easy for us to get permission, probably 90% dry field hunting. And I was just like instantly obsessed, man. And like as a kid, I spent a lot of time outdoors. We were going camping a bunch and did a lot of backpacking with my dad and stuff like that. So that was kind of like the logical next step. I'd already been like really curious about hunting, and everybody deer hunts in Indiana.
Yeah.
You go to Walmart and you get 3 tags for $20, when you buy your license. So I had like eaten a lot of venison, but duck hunting was something that seemed fascinating to me, and I just fell in love with it. Just like there was one public marsh that was on a reservoir that you could paddle into, and we took a canoe in. It was my first hunt, and I don't even think anybody shot anything. We just kind of sat there and like built a blind. But I was like, this is cool, man.
You
And
know
that
what?
was it.
Yeah, you know what's funny, and I've shared my story, but also just chatting with other folks is it's not so much like the hunt or the harvest; it's everything that goes into it. It's like you said, you're
Yeah.
canoeing in, kayaking in, and you're being part of like building a blind and brushing it up and doing all that work there. I don't know, just something about that pulls you in. I mean, obviously the harvest is a lot of fun, especially when you get to go home and enjoy the game that you take. But no,
Hmm.
no, that's really cool. So do obviously got into waterfowl. Do you still hunt deer? Like,
I have not hunted deer out here.
yeah.
Um, I did deer hunt, and I've shot a handful of deer. And then like before I came out here, I lived in Tallahassee, Florida for a handful of years.
Okay.
And there's no, at the time there was no tag system. You could shoot $2 a day every day of the season,
Okay.
which led to not very many bucks around.
Sure.
And you would just have herds of does. And uh, I mean, it's probably been more than 7 years, but I don't know what the
Yeah.
anyways, we shot a lot of deer that we probably shouldn't have been shooting at. But again, just like hanging out with rednecks, in
Yeah.
Florida. And uh, anyways, that was like early on in my hunting career, and it was time for me to like learn the wrong things to do. And but the duck hunting in Florida was not good. Hardest duck hunting I've ever done in my life, dude. It's like everybody and their mom duck hunted and
Okay.
had a boat, and there was very few ducks around. For the most part, you would go in the morning and shoot your three wood ducks, and then now it's 80 degrees and time to go home.
Yeah.
It was brutal. A couple of cool experiences, like we got to hunt some of the salt marshes and like shoot. You would go shoot your two redheads, and that was pretty much all you would see. But there would be like tens of thousands of redheads down there come January.
So
Super cool.
so knowing that you're gonna be making your way up north here, and I mean, obviously you kind of start out in Missouri there, but you can spend some time in Florida. Obviously, get into California, and do your waterfowl hunting down in Southern California. But you're about to come up to one of the best waterfowl hunting areas in the entire world, so it's going to be on, man. And yeah, I look forward to spending time with you, and we'll get you out with our crew. And you've hunted up here a little bit, right?
Yeah, so I've come up the furthest north. I've hunted Los Banos and the grasslands before, and I've hunted Mendota a couple of times because I watched that one YouTube video, the Hunt 41.
Yeah, the Hunt 41 video.
Like,
yeah.
Before I moved here, and I was like, I want to go to that place.
Yeah.
And then I remember I showed up at Mendota, and I was like, I got to get out of here, dude.
Oh yeah.
But then I've hunted the last 2 seasons. I've gone up and hunted late goose season with a guide out of Gridley, Marv, great dude. Shameless plug, but and that was just what a cool area, man. I mean, and like there's a waterfowl culture that's up there that you don't have down here. That was just like really cool to go experience.
Yeah, and it's funny. That's one of the things I wanted to ask you about later in our conversation is about that culture, because obviously up here, you can go into your local sporting goods shop, or I mean, even here, like in the quote unquote city, like the amount of folks that hunt or waterfowl hunt, and I'm up here in the Sacramento area, so I think it's a little more prevalent, but it's not as the chances of you where you live in LA running into a neighbor or someone that maybe isn't hunting of any sort or any sort of outdoor, fishing or whatever. I'm sure, I don't want to stereotype, but I'm sure you get, mountain bikers and hikers and different things like
that. A lot
that.
of fishing. There is a lot of fishing there, and that's like that's been a cool culture to experience.
Yeah.
But that's like predominantly, I mean, there's some dudes that are hardcore that are still out there right now, but
but what I'm saying is, like, when you move up here, we'll go up, and you'll find yourself going up on a Thursday or Friday up up here in the Sac Valley, heading up to any of the numerous towns up there, and you'll have different restaurants that you like to frequent. You'll have different spots that you like to go, and it's just fun being amongst other hunters.
People.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, man.
So.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Well, right on. Well, we're talking a little bit about that culture, and I'm curious, when we think about Southern California, and let's jump into like kind of SoCal here, what does the duck hunting community feel like? When you're out, like maybe at one of the refuges, and you mentioned there's, I think 200 or 300 people for like 50 spots. Like, where are most of those folks coming from? Because I can't imagine that there's too many that are coming from Northern California and, trying their luck down there, unless they maybe get a resi and they've been putting in for some reason. But, where are most of the folks from? Are they from LA, San Diego, out in the desert? Where are most of the folks coming from?
Yeah. So especially like San Jacinto and Wister, I would say, are like true, like full on SoCal refuges. And you can definitely tell, man, like lots of desert trash, and I love them, dude. No disrespect. That's like my favorite part of going to Wister is just seeing like that is such a bizarre landscape, and like I think the people are reflected with that, and also like coming from the Midwest and then like the South, like the diversity is kind of wild too. It's just something I hadn't experienced and has been cool to be a part of. And like their opening day at Wister, some years there's like you can buy breakfast burritos in the parking lot. Like there's one restaurant in the town and they're going to come and make burritos. I don't know if they've done it the last couple of years, but just a cool experience for sure.
Such a smart move, because years ago I was talking with my buddies where I'm like, you know what we need to do? Like, we need to quit sweating on here and, worried about the lotto and all that stuff. It's like, if we get a food truck and just park it off of, like, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but like Maxwell Road up here, out by Delavan or out by Sacramento, like all those guys, you're telling me they wouldn't just pull in and if we have good burritos or something, pull in
You
and
clean up.
oh, absolutely. Enough of the gas station breakfast and be like, oh, this is perfect. So
Yeah.
there you go, a little business idea there. Cool. Well, so it's funny, you were talking about just kind of the diversity and the culture and whatnot. And I think once you get up here, one of the kind of coolest things about Northern California, at least in my experience, is, it's the waterfowl. Like you go to the refuge, especially in the check station parking lot or whatnot, it's just like a melting pot of different folks, right? Because you got people that come from the city, you got people that come from the Bay, you got people that live up in the area, you got the college kids out at Chico. It's just different, and you have some folks that, you know, CEOs, executives, and they're just out in the refuge that weekend. You got some folks that, work, I don't know, like a 9 to 5 gig, Monday through Friday. And it's just kind of cool. Like, you meet different people out there, but the one thing that we all have in common is our pursuit and our love of waterfowl. And it's cool, man. But yeah, it's sometimes it can be interesting. You do see some characters. That's for sure.
Well, and like, yeah. So before I lived out here, and I'll still try and do at least one duck trip a year. But the guys that got me into it are hardcore. So they're either going to go like Oklahoma. I know they did Habitat Flats one year, which was a little out of my budget, but we used to go to Wisconsin and hunt pool 9 for canvasbacks every November. That was like
Nice.
the big group trip we would do.
Yeah.
And on more than one occasion, we had like angry locals. One time they put a padlock on the tongue for the boat trailer, which I thought was kind of a funny thing because we didn't have a key for it. We literally had to go buy an angle grinder in order to drop the trailer at the Airbnb, or we were just going to be screwed pulling the boat around.
Yeah.
But I think like and you always hear about some bullshit going on at the refuge, but for the most part, the waterfowl community here is like super welcoming. And I've made like all my hunting buddies here. I have either been like, I met at a refuge, like in the sweat line, like on a refuge forum, which is like a lot of states, it's all just bashing each other and shit talking and stuff. So that has been an awesome experience too. Is like my best hunting partner, Melody, is like a Chinese woman that I met in the parking lot, And
I was going to ask you about that because I follow on Instagram and I was just kind of curious how you guys.
She's gonna be pissed that I bring this up, but dude, straight up queen of the refuge, man. Like solo hunts out there, for sure, killing like over 100 birds a season, which is like I try not to. I'm not a numbers guy or anything like that. That's not true, but it's just impressive, I think, for Southern California. And I just recognized like when we first met, like she was ate up with it. And if I hit her up on a Tuesday at like 9 p.m. and was like, hey, let's go tomorrow, she was going to be like, all right, I'm in.
That's awesome.
And that's kind of been the harder thing to find here is like there's like I think there's a lot of like fair weather hunters in SoCal. And it's been harder to find some people that are like really ate up with it to the point that they're going to like sacrifice their everything else in their life,
Yeah. And, I don't know if you had a chance to listen to last week's episode or not, but that's one of the things I talked about. My buddy Pete was on there and we grew up together. We got into hunting around the same time, but I think it's fair. And I think I mentioned it on there, but I'd say if he's sitting right here, really kind of a fair weather hunter, right? Nothing negative. And he owns it. He owns it. Right. Yeah. But I just got tired of, hearing no all the time. I'm like, hey, you want to go tomorrow? Hey, I got this resi. I got, this opportunity. Do you want to go? And there was always kind of something going on, unless, the weather was right, or it was like, I mentioned that he prefers to hunt out of blinds. So I really needed kind of a top 10 or 15 resi to kind of secure the blind versus going sit in the toolies. But that's when, I pivoted to a good buddy of mine, Caden. It's funny, he actually worked for me when we started hanging out. And so, just he was more gung ho about it. He was new to the sport, and he had that itch, right? So it's been cool. Yeah. So
That's the hack right there too, man. Like if anybody's listening to this and they're like, your significant other is upset with you, you got to get somebody you work with addicted,
yeah,
deeply, deeply addicted as well. And then you can be like, baby, Cam and Pedro are going and I got to go.
yeah, yep,
They think that I got them into it because we were buddies, but it really didn't have anything to do with that.
no, and it's nice. I've talked about it with some other buddies where it's like I didn't realize how many folks at like my old company were into duck hunting, not hunting in general, but just duck hunting.
Yeah.
And so we used to joke with some of the folks we work with. I'm like, you want to hit a number, put a sales incentive to like, some sort of hunting trip or whatever, we'll hit whatever number you want, So
Yeah.
no, that's really cool. So you talked a little bit about, I'm sorry, her name's Melody.
Melody.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
dude.
I was curious kind of, being in Southern California and you kind of being a transplant new to the area, your hunting crew, is it mostly just you and her? Is there a couple other folks that you guys hunt with, and do you prefer, like, for me, like, when I started hunting, I was like, the more the merrier, right? If I got a resi and I knew that you could take 3 or 4 hunters with you, I was taking 3 or 4 hunters. But then you start realizing you're like, no, that's just too many things to flare birds. It's too many opinions in the blind for setup. And
Yeah.
I got to the point where I'm like, I probably hunt. I do a lot of solo hunts, but also it's mostly
Yeah.
just Kaiten and I. But I want to say we haven't. Don't quote me. I don't know if we've hunted 3 guys this year, and I think maybe last year maybe 2 times. So,
Hmm.
while we have our hunting crew, it's like I don't mind rolling solo.
Yeah, dude. And I'll say this. I've been hunting now. This is season 12 or 13 or something. 12 years, basically. The longer I've been doing it, the more I've become okay with like, yeah, let's all four of us go out there. We're not going to shoot a 4-man limit.
Yeah. Yep.
There's either just not that many birds around, or B, I know the spot. And there's no way we can hide 4 dudes, but like, it'll be fun,
Yeah.
and we can kind of like talk shit and hang out.
Yeah.
But I would say even now, like most, if I'm like really trying to get after them, it's either a solo hunt or it's me and one other person.
Yep.
And I think sometimes I get a little too serious about it, but it's competitive, dude. And I also like that about refuge hunting in California. There is this competitive nature to it, and I think that's a lot of fun. It's important for me to like chill out sometimes, but like Melody, I think gets aggravated because I want to be hidden to the point that we can't see birds. You know what I mean? And
Yep.
I think that's important. And the first thing I noticed when I moved out here was just like and this isn't like a blanket statement, but a lot of YouTube videos that you'll watch, I'm like, there's a lot of pass shooting. There's a
Mhm.
lot of
Yeah.
shooting where I'm watching a YouTube video and I'm like, I mean, that thing is flying like a pintail, but like, I can't see what that is.
Yeah.
And I was coming from a place where I'm like, most of my shots were, it's just us in a field. We're
Yeah.
shooting birds at like 10 or 15
Yeah.
yards. And I became obsessed with this idea of like, I really think I can, especially in a free roam area, I can get far enough away, I can get hidden enough, and like have my decoys look realistic enough, like that I can decoy birds.
Yeah.
And I would rather, I'll still take, like, I'll definitely fall down that rabbit hole where you just are on a sick one and you're kind of shooting at anything
Yeah.
that's with like 40 and in. But I would much rather leave with 2 or 3 birds that I really fooled and got to shoot over the decoys than leave with That's why I shoot so many spoonies, man.
Oh, same.
They just,
And
dude, they do it so good. I have to.
yeah, no, I would say between spoonies and then obviously like pintail always want to work, widgeon want to work, but sometimes just in the refuge it's so crowded, it's so competitive that and
Yeah.
it all depends on what game you're trying to pursue. So like on the episode that you were on, we had Landon on, and he loves shooting greenheads, right? So he'll pass on
Yeah.
birds and he'll just go deep into the refuge, and he'll
Yeah.
just get them to work. And if he goes home with, I don't want to speak for him, but one birds or no bird, like he's not going to
Not gonna
waver or
sweat it.
compromise on like, oh well, I'm gonna take, I don't want to say unethical, but just he knows how he wants to hunt,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
um so no,
And
that it's
I
just
think there's
different.
like,
I mean, it's crowded up here, and I'm not saying that is any excuse for you take the shots that you want to take. My whole thing is like just make sure
absolutely, man.
it's an ethical shot.
Yeah.
So, and that's one of the things that I've really tried to do the last handful of seasons is, you know, obviously I learned very early on. Okay, the skyscraping, like no, right? And then same
Yeah.
thing with like the decoys and I know it's not perfect because obviously it's 4 or 5 in the morning, but I try to walk out my decoys 25 to 35 yards, so that way I kind of know, okay, are they inside 30? When the birds are passing through.
Yeah.
So I mean, to each their own, and one of
And
the things
I
is like
think
you can only control what you can too.
that's it, dude. And I would say like the biggest, like I'm not a, I wouldn't even call myself a great duck hunter. I think I'm moderately okay at killing birds when things go right. I do take pride in like the hide. I think that's such an underrated thing. And you hear about it all the time. And I don't know how it is up there, but down here, I swear to God, man, you'll stand up and you can be like, there's a guy, there's a guy,
Yeah.
there's a guy. And you'll just see dudes like these like big dark shapes in the tulies on the like hunting from the levees, like, and you want to just, and I think for the most part, it's not their fault. They're either don't have a mentor. Maybe they're just going out there and like that's good. Just being out there is good for them, And they're like, I don't even really care about killing birds.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, dude, if you could get off of the levee, get really hidden to the point where you're like, wow, I actually can't see very well. Like it's gonna happen, man. You're gonna be sitting there and like birds are just gonna land in your decoys.
For sure, and I mean I've been guilty of this too. It's like you know you go into it sometimes you're like, hey, I'm going to walk as far as I can, get out by myself, but sometimes you're like, okay, I'm just going to dive in right here and hop in.
Yeah.
But also up here, if we're talking about refuges or even like, you're talking about your private rice blind, as the season goes on, the cover, as we know, just gets
It's
beat up,
just
gets
blown out. Yep.
exactly, right? And some of when you get up, we obviously have some excellent properties up here, for public land, but some of the assigned blinds, I mean, they're just a mound of dirt out there, and so even if
Yeah.
someone's hunkered down, you're going to see like their head sticking out, right? So, and the unfortunate thing, and I don't want to speak for all the refuges up here, but I think this year, whether it was like the shutdown or some other, or just staffing, but normally they do like work weekends where like, you can
Hmm.
go out as a hunter and I've tried
Fresh
to take
blinds.
advantage of those. Yeah. Try to put
Yeah.
in and help out. And it's good to, families go out there and do some work, but I don't think they did too many of those. And that goes a long way too, at
Yeah.
least getting getting the kickoff to the season off on the right foot, cover and stuff. But also, and this is one of my biggest pet peeves, and I've talked about it multiple times on here. And once again, I can only control what I can. But for some reason, when people go out to public land, they treat it like shit,
Dump all over it,
Yeah,
dude.
yeah. So I mean, you
Literally
see,
sometimes.
yeah, yeah, you see like shells and garbage, and one thing that we try to do, like Kate and I, is like when we are tucked into the toolies, even for our hunt, is like we establish, hey, here's our pathway in and out, and so like we basically go in once or twice, or in and out once or twice, but he sends his dog in and out of that same way, so that way we're not just trampling out there
Yeah.
and ruining our cover for the hunt. But as the
Yeah.
season goes on, you're just walking through the pond and you can see where folks have just have been, so
Yeah. And I think that's so, yeah, just like things that like certain things I've done is like, because you'll get you got a big Thule island. You're like hitting it with your headlamp when you walk up, and you're like, oh, sick. And you get up, and that whole thing is hollowed out, and you have just this shell of a Thule island. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where it's just the outside rim, and dudes have trampled the whole middle part down. And it's like I'm gonna try and stand up what I can, but I'm literally gonna tuck into that little edge. I'm gonna take my sled to the next Thule
Yep.
island and put it, even if it's 50 yards away,
Yep.
stash it over there. It's just like one less hard edge that they're gonna be looking at. And if I have to go cut even just a couple of branches that I can have them like kind of sticking up over the top of my head, it's gonna work wonders, you know. And that kind of comes back to the like either hunting solo or hunting small groups, you know, where you can kind of break up a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just like I would say if anyone is having trouble where you're like, for a long time, I used to think you'll hear birds flying over the top and you'll hear their wing beats pick up and you're like, damn, I just flared those birds.
Yeah.
But the more I've watched, it's like those birds didn't really flare, but they just didn't really, or they're gonna land out in the open, like not by any other ducks. It's like a solo that should have done it, and for some reason they just kind of like circled once and went and landed 100 yards away. It's like you flared. They didn't see you, but they knew something was weird, you know.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
and they're so educated. They know kind of where we're at, and where the safe places are. Because I mean,
yeah,
yeah, we'll literally be on the refuge and we'll just watch them just land, 100, 150 yards away, and we're just, hey,
also,
keep an eye on them. They jump up. Let's see what happens. But
what the hell? What's with maybe somebody can chime in, or I'm curious what you think. What's with the gadwall out here, dude?
what's that?
Every other state or flyway that I've hunted, gadwall are like, I don't want to say like gimme ducks, but they're not very bright. They always decoy super easy. You can like yell at them with a mallard
Sure.
call and they react. Those are the most aggravating dang birds I've ever seen. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just they sit at the same refuges for a long time, but like those things are tough to kill out here, dude. Do you guys see any
Yeah.
of that where
No.
they're just like being really wonky and not finishing or landing off by themselves?
No, I would this season, yes, and I would definitely, anyone listens, hit us up on Instagram. Shoot Colin a message on Instagram as well. But
I
just
hate those gray ducks, dude.
the opportunities haven't been there this year. For me,
Yeah.
like where I've been. I think maybe 2, 3 gaddies this year.
Yeah. We've killed
So
some, but it's like I'm like turning blue in the face, calling at them and like working them, and like we're like literally you can't even see out of the like where you're hiding,
yeah,
and they're still like, I don't know,
yeah,
and then they go and land. So we've killed a handful, but it's just one of those funny things where I'm like, I don't know what it is with the Pacific Flyway gadwalls, but they're those things are tough,
yeah.
man.
One last question on kind of like the culture down there.
Yeah.
I'm curious, and it's kind of a quick question. Is like up here we have a lot of clubs. Whether it's some kind of, I say clubs in air quotes, like groups of guys that maybe lease a handful of blinds together, but also we have like private property clubs, some high dollar clubs, obviously up here in the Buttes, but just throughout the grasslands and all in the Sassoon Marsh. Are there
Yeah.
many clubs down in
So
your neck of the woods? Like,
we got 3 refuges. You
sure.
got Salton Sea, you got Wister.
Mm-hmm.
There's clubs around there.
Okay.
I think some of them do pretty good, man. There's an insane number of snow geese that end up down there,
Yeah.
and I think some of those clubs really hammer on them. Same thing with San Jacinto. There's literally like a private club in the middle of San
Okay.
Jacinto,
All right.
but that's like the only one. And then Kern is like there are a handful of clubs in Kern County right there on like the north side of Bakersfield.
Yeah.
And that's almost all like they got flooded corn there. It's all like moist soil stuff. There's no rice really. And I think most of them probably do pretty good. Just because there's like not as many, and water is so limited down here. It's like if you can find water, there has to be ducks on it. Like they just don't have that many places to go.
Yeah, and I can look this up, but maybe does CWA have a property down there?
Yeah, yeah.
It's at the Tulare Lake, or what is it, or
It's
what's it called?
it's Goose Lake.
Goose Lake. Okay, but
Goose
down in
Lake.
like Tulare area, or
Yeah, it's right by the Kern Refuge, like a couple miles down the road.
yeah.
But
Have you ever hunted there?
I've hunted it once.
Okay.
It's odd. They make you. I think I got an invite actually
Okay.
to hunt, and pit blind, like really nice pit blinds,
Yeah.
and decoys were already there, and we sat until like 11 a.m. or so, and didn't see any birds,
Yeah.
and ended up saying like screw it, and drove to the refuge down the road and shot a limit by the end of shooting time.
Nice.
But the same guy that invited me went back there and hunted that Goose Lake
Sure.
property and shot 2 banded cinnamon teal.
I mean, obviously they have access to some amazing properties, California waterfowl, but
Yeah,
both every hunt I've been on 2, 3 different California waterfowl properties, and they're in pristine locations, but it just wasn't the
yeah,
day. It wasn't the day, just,
yeah,
and by all accounts, it probably should have been, but just, birds weren't there, and it is what it is. But yeah, I got an opportunity, an invite for one of their newer properties coming up, and I'll let you know off air, but we'll probably talk about it on here too, but what it's going to be like. So that'll be
yeah. That's
cool.
awesome, man.
Yeah. So I'm curious, like kind of like talking about the habitat and the locations. You keep referencing like the 3 main, like, refuges, but
Yeah.
I'm curious, like down there, is it just called the Kern? Is it called the Salton Sea? Because like up here, we have Sac Valley, we have the grasslands, we have the Bay, we have Sassoon Marsh. Like, do you guys have like regions, or is it just like if you're talking to a hunting buddy, like what would you call, like if you're going to head up to the Kern or that area? Is it just called
Hmm.
Kern? Like,
Yeah.
or
Most people just call it Kern,
okay,
and that's so far as I know that yeah, that's the southernmost refuge in the Central Valley.
yeah,
It's like it's a awesome. It's federal.
yeah,
The manager, I think, does a great job as far as like managing the birds, but part of that is I think like 60% of the refuge is closed zone.
okay,
It's just hard to get into, man. And it's like we kind of talked about this too. Like the problem here is everything's so far away. Like San Jacinto is the closest. It's like an hour and a half drive for me from LA.
mm-hmm.
Going to Wister is 3 hours. Going up to Kern is 2 hours. Like you pretty much have to devote all day
Yeah,
to just sit in the sweat line and maybe not get in.
yeah,
And that's part of it. Like that's what's cool. Like Wister is straight up in the desert, dude.
yeah,
Like Bombay Beach is down there. Like is nothing but Joshua trees and sand.
yeah. I was say you're like
And
pretty close to the dunes out there,
yeah, and you're gonna get checked by Border Patrol when you leave. They got a checkpoint set up, like you are in the desert
Yeah,
and tweakers running around in the middle of the night, whole 9 yards. But it's just such a cool environment, and like there is some toolies and stuff. Like I know CWA's done a bunch down there, but like it's a lot of salt cedar, which is like this weird, it's probably invasive, but I'm talking about like your gun will brush up against this bush and you'll have like insta rust
oh
on your
wow,
gun from like the salt. And yeah, it's just a crazy environment, man.
yeah. That is crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I've always been curious about the Kern. Obviously, driving the 5 for so many years. Going down and seeing family, and I've put in there, not all the time, but I've put in a handful of times, and obviously only put in a handful of times. I'm not going to have much success, but you never know. I'm always hoping to be that one person. It's like, hey, you only put in once this year and you got drawn. But it's a hike,
Yeah.
man. It's a hike for you
Dude.
and for us. So like even for me, like it's like I think a 4.5, 5 hour drive.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And it's one of those where like I'll tell you the last time I went, I think I finally got on a little past noon, but like they only give out 7 reservations or
Oh
9
wow.
reservations maybe.
Okay.
So I've put in for
Yeah.
every hunt date for the last 5 seasons. I've
Sure.
never pulled one.
Wow.
You know,
Yeah.
you're like not gonna pull one. Even San Jacinto, which is like, it's funny enough, when we did the check-in, I was like, I hate that place. I'll never
Yeah,
hunt
you said you
there.
swore
I
it
went and
off, and then
hunted,
you're.
dude.
Yeah, I was gonna say you said you swore it off forever, and I was like, wait, he's talking about it again, like he's been there.
I got an invite, man. So I've never pulled a San Jacinto resi
Okay.
after 4 or 5 seasons, whatever it's
And
been. I've never
I
pulled
put
one.
in for San Jacinto and Wister, obviously for the holidays, just because I knew if I get one, you'd be able to go hunt with me. But yeah,
Yeah,
no luck there either.
yeah. Wister's big enough. They got, it's over 100 like assigned ponds.
Wow,
It's massive, and it just kind of stretches up the shore of the Salton Sea. There's been days where I just kind of show up and walk on.
that's
Like,
cool.
I show up to an empty parking lot, right, like a little bit before shoot time, and they're like, "Yeah, just pick whatever's left."
Yeah,
It very rarely fills up. But San Jacinto, just because it's so close, you're getting like everybody from San Bernardino is coming over,
yeah,
everybody from LA, all those little towns east of Los Angeles. It's
yeah.
like right there. And but I got an invite. A good dude that I met him on Reddit of all places, and he wanted to go, and I took him on a couple of hunts, and he hit me back and was like, "Dude, I got a resi if you want to go."
That's awesome.
And I went into it thinking like, I'm moving soon. I might as well go hunt
Yeah,
this place just to say like I went and hunted it. And I like told him he pulled a number 3 too, which was like pretty crazy.
yeah. Good for him.
And yeah, we shot bunch of ringnecks, which I know some people don't like, but I'm kind of partial to them. And then had a greenhead come in and shot that thing at like 10 yards at like 10 a.m. right before we left.
Yeah, nice. I think I saw that on your story or one of your posts.
It's crazy,
Yeah,
man.
that's awesome.
Probably was raised in a crate and got turned loose the day before, but that's a whole nother topic.
Yeah. Well, and let's pivot real quick because just a
Yeah.
quick question before we jump into kind of your hunting style, especially as it plays into Southern California. You mentioned the ringnecks and what, but you also got that greenhead. Your fiance, like, you guys, does she enjoy waterfowl? Like, do you guys, like, how do you prepare your game?
Well,
Are you
she's
mostly,
not.
do you make
Dude,
sticks? What do you,
she's such a trooper, man. She is, I would say, like very adventurous and very willing to
sure.
try anything once. And there have been recipes and like different, I do a lot of jerky, I
Yeah.
do a lot of sausage where she's like, that is good. I just don't want to eat it. And I'm like, all right,
Yeah. Yeah, that's how it is at our house. But she's tried it, right? And
yeah,
tried it so many different ways. We've done pintail, speck, mallard, and then obviously the duck sticks at the end of the season. And you
yep,
put enough jalapeno cheddar in there. I mean, you can make anything taste good, including the ring necks and whatever else
oh
you
yeah,
got out there. So.
yeah,
No,
and
I'm
all
just
the
always curious because a lot of times if my wife's traveling for work or she's gone, I'm like, oh, I go in the freezer and that's when I pull out, a couple pintail breasts and I have a nice little feast myself.
yep, she works late like 3 nights a week, so
Nice.
I've been eating duck for like 3 days a week since seasons kind of started picking
Yeah,
up.
good for you.
So like teal, most of the puddle ducks cooking like a steak.
Yeah.
I call it a meat bowl.
Yep.
I'm probably just gonna eat that thing standing over the cutting board. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
I try not to. I got a buddy that's an incredible cook, and him and his girl are like, his girl really is a chef, dude.
That's awesome.
Uh, but they do all sorts of fancy stuff. I'm probably just gonna sear that sucker inside down in cast iron and cut it thin and eat it like a steak. You know
Love
what I
it.
mean?
Yep. Love it.
Uh, the off ducks, and I hate to call them that, but
Sure.
like my spoonies, the most of the divers, like with the exception of redheads, I think redheads are great, man. I'll cook that like it's a pain in the ass to pluck them, but I'll cook that like a steak. But like the ringnecks, if I accidentally shoot a buffalo head because I'm bored, that's going sausage pile or jerky, and I'll
Yeah.
just do like a soy teriyaki marinade.
Oh, you do your own.
And hmm
Oh,
and
nice.
then she got me a dehydrator for
Yeah.
Christmas, and just like slicing it as thin as you
Yep.
can, chuck it in that marinade for a day or so. Hank Shaw is like anything Hank Shaw, and you can always mess with the ingredients a
Yeah.
little bit. Like I don't deal with any of like the curing salt, anything like that, but heavy on the soy just so it's got a lot of salt, and then just chuck it in the dehydrator for 4 or 5 hours, and it's pretty good, man.
Yeah, years ago, well, when I first got into waterfowl hunting, that's what I was doing was like end of season, like you said, the best way to put it, those off ducks, right? Put them
Hmm.
in like a big container. I dump a jar or two of soy teriyaki on it,
Yeah,
and I had the dehydrator as well. And but I don't know, just I'm partial to those pepper sticks. That's
yeah,
good stuff. So when you come up here, I'll connect you with my guy. He's actually in Sacramento, so yeah, we'll get you connected. But
absolutely, man.
cool. Well, we chatted a little bit about this, and it sounds like you've done some kayak hunting in the past, but now I'm just kind of curious, what's your hunt style? Are you mostly kind of walk in, you got your waders on, your sled, your cart, and you're just
Yep.
finding a spot? That's kind of and is that the majority of folks down there? Because I know up here, there's some spots where people are running their boats. Obviously, for the private property, it's nice. They can take their side by side right up to the check. But obviously at the refuges, we have some that allow bikes, but for the most part, you're
Yeah,
hoofing it, right?
yeah. I don't think so. Wister and San Jacinto, it's all either assigned ponds or blinds, so there's no need for a bike. Real, I mean, I'm sure people do just to make it easier, but there's not like that whole racing to the
Yeah.
spot isn't really a thing. The free roam at Kern, if you ever get in, is pretty wild. So what I do is I got a jogging stroller,
Oh, nice.
and I got this from Melody, and I've seen other people do it, but this is the method that I like, and I have that, and then I have that a decoy bag that I'll throw decoys in. That goes in the stroller. I got a gun rack for an ATV off of Amazon, and I bolted that to the side of my stroller so my gun can sit
Yeah.
on the side. And then it has that little pouch at the bottom of the jogging stroller. A lot of times my walk is going to be like a mile at least, maybe a little more than a mile before I'm like going off into the water.
Yeah.
I'll just I'll wait to put my waders on. And that's a huge, it's so simple, but like not having to walk a mile in waders is nice.
Yeah, no,
Um,
it definitely makes a difference. A couple seasons ago, I made the investment. I got some Sitka waders that are really nice and breathable.
yeah,
And so, what's nice about it is like not so much in the morning because you're bundled up pretty good. It's pretty cool. But on the way back, I'll just undo the zipper and let the AC come into the
yeah.
body here. But no, I
And then
know
a
a lot of
sled.
guys that do that put their waders on. Just much
Oh yeah,
easier.
yeah, yeah.
So.
But yeah, that's it. I'll do that, and then I just kind of like flop my jet sled over the top and just strap it all down with a piece of paracord
Yeah.
and good to go.
Nice. Well, I don't know if you have one, but next time you're out, send me a picture. I'd love to see that setup.
Yeah,
You know?
absolutely, man. It's been good, and I know like I see a lot of dudes running the deer carts, and I think that stuff's good until those levees get wet, and then it's just like a nightmare, dude.
Yeah, I have God, I've had one since my first season, and it's one of those big deer game carts, and
Hmm.
it's one of the oversized one because it can hold my jet sled, and I don't have the jet sled XL, but it still holds quite a bit of gear. Because honestly, I hit you up on Instagram about it because I saw your Rig'em Right setup, so I have enough
Yeah,
room for
that
that
bag.
bag, and it's funny. I bought the bag, I used it once, and I was like, it just wasn't good for trying to stay mobile and light and all that stuff, and I wasn't hauling that
Yeah,
many deeks. But
yeah,
that cart, it's not bad. But I was after a storm. I was at one of the refuges last month, and I mean, I turned into like a Clydesdale where I basically was pulling that thing.
yeah. It's like
Um,
a knife through butter. Those like
yeah,
skinny hard tires.
yeah.
Um,
But it's funny that same hunt. One of my buddies, it's funny, the sled was twice as wide as the cart, so you hit like you're in some of those like mud holes and whatnot, and you hit like a good pothole, the whole thing tips. It's just
yeah,
it's a
yeah,
mess. But
yeah.
no, we,
And
we
on
figure
that
out what works
jogging,
for us.
On that jogging stroller, the other thing I do is like I let all the air out of the tires.
Nice.
It's kind of a pain if you're on
Sure.
gravel or anything, but as soon as I get to the mud, I kind of just float across the top. And then the other part of that is like I'm running predominantly teal decoys. I don't think I really like it. I don't think it matters, dude. Dudes have been shooting ducks over black Coke bottles
Yeah.
for years. So I like the teal decoys just because they're small and I can like take. So I'll take a dozen teal, and then I have a dozen mix of like a couple of spoonies, a couple of pintails, a couple of widgeon, and that's like the second dozen that I'll bring. And I'll have some of the and a jerk string. Like I'll have four of those hooked up on a jerk string.
Nice. And it's funny, man. I put together just some talking points that I wanted to chat with you about. And literally my next question was, what does your usual or average decoy spread look like?
Yeah,
And it's funny. I was listening to another podcast today, actually, and they were talking about regular decoys versus those new like super mag ones, those like large deeks that. And I'm just like, that doesn't really make sense for like if you're a public land hunter, you're going
no,
in and out.
I would
But
love to,
yeah, but we
but
we run a similar
yeah,
setup, man, and I some people might still say it's too much, but I think I run 18 deeks right now, and
hmm
I have. Well, actually, I take that back. There's 24 in the bag right now because I have a dozen teal because they're so small. But normally I run 6 teal, but I have a
yeah,
dozen in there. I have 6 spoonies, 3 pintail, and 3 widgeon. Depending on the time of year or where I'm at, I'll even throw on like 3 or 4 full body like spec floaters. Just
yeah,
depending
yeah,
on where I'm
heck
at.
yeah.
And those are cool because they're just sitting on a carabiner. I just throw them in the sled, and it could be a game time decision. I can leave them in the rig or take them with me. It is what it is, depending on where I'm going. So,
Well, and I think so controversial, dude. I think refuge hunting for the most part is easy. And I don't mean like it's physically a lot of stuff and it's a lot of walking and it's kind of but like I think people that have hunted the refuges a lot would go to another state where you're just kind of on your own and would probably struggle.
oh, for
Um,
sure.
and so what I've tried to do is like use some of the things that those guys taught me back east to bring out here. And a big one of that is like ducks feel safe around geese. And the other thing is like just trying to do something a little bit different. Like if every decoy spread on the refuge is 12 mallards, I don't think ducks are that smart,
Mhm.
but I think they pick up on like, man, we keep getting shot at every time we go here. So doing things like switching up like doing like small family groups
Mhm.
really spread out. That was I learned that off of watching Mid Valley Mercenaries
Oh yeah,
before I moved out here.
yeah, yeah.
And he was talking about like almost having no decoys within shooting range where you're like using little family groups to like block off areas. Like these ducks are used to having to kind of hide and tuck up. And it's like you might think like they can't see it, but I don't know, just trying some weird off the wall different stuff has worked out for me on those public spots, you know.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look at their videos, but yeah, I know Mid Valley Mercenaries and Titus and that group there, and it's funny like he was like the king of rolling light because he would say sometimes like they go out to their local refuge with like 3 to 6 decoys,
Yeah, and that's
and I
cool.
mean
Like,
I know, and I mean, I'm sure it wasn't all the time, right? But it's just
right.
about like trust me, it's especially if we go somewhere where maybe it's like a resi that we've been looking forward to for a long time. For some reason, we just tend to overthink it. And so we totally like if I'm going to Sac Refuge, which is like the one that I like to go to most, it's pretty easy to get on. It's an hour from the house, but for some reason I get a draw at Delavan right down the street. Kate and I are like, hey, what should we bring? Or, like, what do you think? Hey, what are you going to bring? I'll bring this. And next thing you know,
Yeah.
like, we're loaded down and, so it's just about being disciplined. So I think your comment about refuge hunting being easy, I think I understand where you're coming from on there because because when I go solo hunting, I basically have my setup here, and now, like, I might make little tweaks, but for the most part, I have it in the garage where I have my sled, my deeks, my cart on top. Occasionally, I might
Yeah.
throw in like a mojo. It's already on the pole. It's just in there in the sled. I'm good to go.
Yeah.
You know, it's got to put the wings on, so it's pretty easy. The hardest part is one, the access getting on, and two is finding that hole, right? Finding the
Yeah.
X for the day.
Yeah. And I think so. This kind of comes the way I try to think about it too. That's been helpful is like I'm either it's a place that I'm familiar with, and I know ducks want to sit here, which I think on a free roam unit that is shooting 2 or 3 times a week is hard to find. So more than likely, it's like I'm running traffic.
Yeah.
And yes, it's easier to only carry out 3 or 6 decoys. But if I'm running traffic, I want like a big. I want it to look like a closed zone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I think you're right. Like sometimes putting 4 or 5 dozen decoys out there is going to be a pain in the ass, but that's probably going to be different than what all the other groups are doing out there on that free roam. And the birds are going to see that and at least like come take a look.
Yeah, and that normally happens for us when, let's say, we have a top 10 somewhere, and we know that we have a pretty good idea on where we're going to go. We're either going to be on this end of the refuge or that end, but we kind of know where we're going to be, and we're familiar with, the layout, the water situation, all that. And so that's when things kind of get crazy, where it's like, hey, let's just go big and build our own little closed zone out there, right? But the key is the weather, the wind, the motion, right? Because you put out 3-4 dozen decoys and they're all just sitting there stagnant, just literally on glass. It looks horrible, right? So that kind of leads me to my next question for you is how much motion's being run down there, like at the refuges? Like, are folks big into the spinning wings, and do you run those? Do you see a lot of them out there?
Yeah, and I'm super torn on the mojos, on the spinning wings.
Sure.
I totally get that it's unnatural for a bird to see just like this constant thing.
Yeah.
So I think the ones with the remotes are worth their weight in gold, and I'm going to use it like that. Like I'm going to have a call in one hand and the remote in the other, and I'm going to be just like I'm using my call when they're like wingtips and tail feathers. I'm going to be hitting that mojo remote just to like so there's a little bit of flash, and as soon as they're like coming back or they're over the top, I'm going to kill the mojo.
Yeah.
Or a lot of what I've had good experience doing, same thing with like hiding, kind of like hiding the decoys, is like I'll hide the mojo where I tuck it up against, even if it's like stupid close. Like if the only toolies I have is the one I'm hiding in, I'll still try and like tuck it up around the corner where the toolies are kind of blocking some of the vision to that mojo. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, and that's a great point, because sometimes I will do that too, where it's like it's not necessarily sticking up 3 feet out of the water. I'll kind of put it real low, so it's almost like it's kind of like coming into land. But sometimes what I've got about 3 seasons ago, I met him at outdoors show here in Roseville, actually, and it was the guys from Bluebird Waterfowl. They do that animator with like they have the puddles, the little feet, and so ever since I got a set of those, and ever since I did that, I'm like, well, let me just pack this in closer to the toolies, so that way, because it's all about the sound, not so much the visual, right? So no, so that's a cool piece too. So
yeah, and I'll try and do that. I have one of those decoy spreaders, the motion decoys that dude that's I think it's at Washington or something, and I'll run that. And then I actually
did you get that from MVM too? They used to put they were big on those too.
Him and freelance duck hunting. There's a dude like in Kansas. He's like one of the first YouTube channels I started watching when I was trying to kind of figure it out. But I use, instead of the little rock bag that they give you, I put like a kayak anchor on it.
Okay.
And then I beefed up the bungee. And then if you've ever seen dudes in Arkansas when they're pulling on a jerk string, they're freaking trying to break it, dude.
Yeah.
They're like, so I don't have one of the animators, but I'm using that jerk string. I'm not going to be doing it when they're coming to me. And like some of this stuff, if I'm mostly shooting teal and like I'm not really that worried about it. There's one spot I go that we can talk about off air, but like I shoot a decent number of mallards, and I think some of these like little details are more important with that. But like
Absolutely.
I'm trying to like make water sounds with that jerk
Yep.
string, and I love the pulsators. I haven't had one last more than a season, which is I do want to the new Higdon one. I think that's supposed to be sealed. I'm sure is better. I just haven't had $200 to spend on it, you know. And then
Yeah.
jerk string was like $40, man.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, no, those pulsators are nice, especially, the first 6-7 weeks of the season before, you can start doing, the spinning wings and whatnot.
yeah,
It's good to use. Yeah, I have a handful of those, but yes, to your point, and actually one just died a couple weeks ago, and so I might have to reach out to Hignan on that one.
yeah, dude. It's just like they're awesome. It's just like anything that sits in water that long, I
Yeah.
think,
My
what are you
buddy
gonna do?
Caton on the last episode was talking about that new one from Mojo.
Oh
God,
yeah,
the one it's like it just bobs up and down, but so
yeah.
rather than
Almost,
like
it's basically like an ice eater.
yeah.
Yeah,
So we'll have to take a peek at that.
that'd be awesome, man.
Yeah, it came into some gift cards for
There you go.
Christmas, so maybe I'll take a peek at that. I'll
Yeah,
do some more research online real quick. So,
but yeah, I think motion is probably the most important thing,
oh,
and
absolutely,
so I'm always going to take at least 2 dozen decoys. I might not put all of them out, but I want to have them. And then I'm going to have 4 decoys on a jerk string. I'm going to bring a mojo if I can. And then it feels ridiculous, dude, but just literally kicking the water, man. Those
yeah,
Arkansas dudes do it. And the more I thought about it, I'm like, I'm sitting in knee deep water in the coulees. I might as well, like, they can't see me. When they're moving, I'm just gonna kick water and like put some ripples out there, and it works. You feel ridiculous, but just stuff like that, anything to move something,
yeah. I teased it on one of the first episodes of For the Fowlers, but I got a buddy that I work with. He's based out of Tennessee, and he
Mhm.
hunts all that flooded timber out in Arkansas and whatnot. And I'm trying to get him to come on. I got to reach out to him again. Maybe I can get him after season or something because just how we're talking about Southern California hunting here. I think it'd be cool to kind of hear the perspective there. And he's done some other podcasts before, so it's been cool to hear. But that's just something we're not used to,
No, no,
But you mentioned just the flooding of, or not the flooding, but the kicking and fluttering of, kicking your leg out and stuff. When I go out, like if it gets slow, or let's say we're not running a dog that day, and we go out to pick up a bird, I'm kicking my feet and dragging my feet to kind of get that chocolate milk going.
yeah,
Because that makes a huge difference too. Maybe there's not a lot of wind or different stuff going on, and while maybe you have like 4 to 6 birds on the jerk string, at least now when the birds are flying over, they see kind of this cloudy, murky water. So it's, hey, what's going on there? There's something
yeah.
going on that all those ducks are interested in. So
That's it, man.
yeah, well, we are running a little after an hour here, but so we'll wrap it up soon.
Nice.
But I did want to ask you about this, and then we'll close off. I'm curious to kind of get your opinion on, when we think about migration down south. And one thing I've always been kind of curious about is, does the season make sense? Like the dates make sense for you guys? Because obviously you guys are at the southern tip, of
Hmm.
California, further along in the Pacific Flyway. So, when does it really turn on? I know we've had some weather and it's obviously getting cold up here, and maybe this is a bad year to kind of talk about it because with the fog that we had in the valley and stuff, it kind of messed up, the migration a little bit in my opinion. I think a lot of people would agree with that, but it's almost like, man, it's probably, I would think down south, you're starting to see these new birds show up and then, hey, it's end of season, right? So
Yeah.
how does that play in for the folks down in Southern California?
When I first started hunting, I very much, even in Indiana, there was this sense of like, which was only a 60-day season, and
Mhm.
we had a split and this and that. And
Yeah.
there was this sense of like, oh, season's too early. The more that I've read and listened to, and it's like the season here is longer than any other flyway. We have like more birds. Like where I'm from, you would go shoot your 4 mallards and then pack it up and
Yep.
go home because
Yeah.
that's all that's around.
Yep.
We can't. I really don't think we should be shooting birds past the end of January. Like as soon as they start pairing up, that's gotta be the end. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Or we're gonna start, I think, affecting, like you hear all the time that like hunting doesn't affect population. I think the later that some of that stuff gets, I'm not a biologist, but it seems like that's kind of the no zone.
Yeah.
And I think the reality is the wintering ground is now the Sac Valley.
Hmm.
There's just not a reason for most birds to come further south than that.
Right.
Pressure is going to be some of it, lack of water might be some of it, but like the reality is it's hotter down here.
Hmm.
There's less water. There's just not, so things like teal, like the spoonies, some of the divers that are, their end goal is Mexico anyways. It makes sense, but like I realized when I moved here, like I'm not going to shoot mallards. I'm probably going to shoot some pintail and widgeon and stuff like that, but it's, you know, teal, the SoCal teal season is what I started calling it.
Yeah. It's interesting because, like I said, it's we've had weeks of 40, 50 degrees, but it still isn't as cold as it could be, up here. And then
Yeah.
I texted you when I was driving through LA last week, and I think it was like 83
Yeah.
degrees, and I was like, this doesn't feel like duck weather,
N-
And so obviously you guys make it happen down there, but yeah, I was just curious about that. And when you do, you're right. When you factor in the biology part of it, and we think about the conservation and the population control, and obviously making sure that the resource can thrive. You're right there, but I was just more thinking of the sport part of it, right?
Mhm.
Where we're constantly waiting for the birds to fly down from up north, and I'm like, man, by the time they get down to you guys, season's over. So
Yeah, and I think it's just one of those things of like managing
yeah,
expectations, and then like just like balancing. It's we call it slow Vember, but it's really more like it's it's longer down
yeah,
here.
yeah,
You know
yeah,
what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
Like opening day is going to be cool. 2 years ago on opening day, we shot 28 cinnamons in 30 minutes. You know what I mean? Like that was an awesome experience. But then it's really just not going to pick up until mid to late December. And yeah, just managing expectations and realizing like the only reason that we have any sort of migration, I think, is because so many of these birds are coming from or like Northern California and
Yep.
Oregon. Because the reality is like you watch what a lot of these ducks will sit through in other parts of the country, and it's not cold here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I haven't broken ice since I've lived here.
Hmm.
And you'll see birds further east that are like keeping ponds from freezing, and it's like below zero, and they're just going to stay there. They're going to
Yep.
wait to migrate still. So they're pretty hardy birds. I think like a lot of them just don't have to migrate. So I just try and manage my expectations and realize like, hey, these birds are probably stale. They've probably been here for a long time, and I just really try not to be like a limit dependent hunter.
Yeah. And that's how, obviously, if we could check out a limit, or we leave the rice blind with the limit, that's great. But
Yeah.
honestly, you made a comment earlier about like the competitive part, where I'm a competitive person, but when it comes to waterfowl hunting, this is really like my hobby, right? It's my way to
Yeah.
kind of release from the daily grind of work, and just you get out with your buddies and you kind of forget everything else that's going on. So if I shoot one bird or no birds, like it's better than what I could be doing at work or whatever it might be. So
Absolutely, man.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, cool, man. Well, yeah, I really appreciate we'll wrap it up. But I really appreciate you sharing your kind of experiences down south, and
Yeah, dude.
especially
Thanks for having me.
it might be your last season down there. But I
Oh no.
but no, man, I'm pumped. I know we talked offline a few weeks ago about you looking to move up here, but I'm glad that
Yeah.
seems like it's going to be happening in the coming weeks. So I look forward to getting out with you next season up here, and yeah,
It'll
man,
be good.
we'll chat later this week. We'll do another season check in and kind of see how things are going down south, and yeah, we'll get the report from you and Melody, and we'll
Yeah, dude.
excited
Maybe
to.
I might try and coordinate it to where she can join in or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, let's do it.
She's a trip. I'll have to get her to
Have the Queen of the Refuge.
yeah, I'll try and get her to watch her language a little bit.
Hey, it's all good.
No, dude, you don't understand.
No, no, that's awesome.
uh,
Well, right on. Well, hey, like I said, follow Colin on Instagram. The Sweat Line. He's posting and he's got some good stories from his hunts on the weekend and whatnot. But also make sure that you're following us on For the Fowlers on Instagram, and then continuing to rate and review this podcast on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. So, Colin, we'll chat later this week, man. Happy New Year, and we'll
yeah, Happy
chat
New
soon.
Year's, man. All
All
right,
right,
sounds good, brother.
see you,
Thanks for
buddy.
having me.
Bye.